everyone, it's Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm, and I am stoked because I just came back from my first farmer's market of 2022 and it completely exceeded my expectations. I mean, I've been selling at markets for my side soap business for the first few years, and I think we might have actually done more than I've ever done at a good market with soap. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think that was the case. So if you've been following me, you'll know that I literally just moved to my new place where we are starting a flower farm about a month and a half ago. And that means I didn't have any blooms to sell for today that I grew on my own. So I ended up working with a local farmer, sourcing some specialty tulips from her, and was able to get 26 bouquets. So today's sales are comprehensive of both flower sales as well as my side business of soaps, candles, shampoo bars, hand sanitizers, that kind of stuff. And I put the soap business stuff on the application form because I knew that I might not have enough blooms in the first month or so. So I was really glad I did that because that's really the only reason why I got accepted. They really liked the branding of my business. So I'm going to break this video up into two parts. I'm going to break this up into first the financials because I know that you're probably all wondering how much money did I make, and I'm actually going to break it down in detail and talk about the cost of attending a market and really what I netted in terms of profit. And then I'm going to talk about stuff that I did at the market that I'm going to change for next time. And there were quite a few mistakes made. So let's talk about money. Today from 10 to 2 p.m. was the market. In the span of 4 hours, we grossed in revenue $1,387. I think anytime I break $1,000, I'm like, I'm through the moon. Like it's such an accomplishment for me because, you know, I'm not selling like super high priced items, right? I'm selling a bar soap for $30. I'm selling a bouquet for $20, right? So for me to get to that $1,000 mark, it's not as easy, right? And I'm not selling like pickles or cake or pizza where it's sweet and I'm always gonna have a line out the door. I feel like for me, I've always struggled selling soap and hitting $1,000 mark. So I'm very, very happy. Now, of the $1,387, $455 came from my flowers. So in my last video, I talked about how I sourced flowers from a local farmer. Well, I bought specialty tulips from her because I was confident in terms of the margin that I can make. And essentially, I said to myself, well, on average, I'm going to pay about $1.50 per stem from her. That is actually a little bit higher than what you would get from wholesale if you look at the Boston Ornamental Terminal sheets. But the thing is, she's local, she's small, and I did not want to go to a wholesaler that was importing stems from abroad. Like that just kind of defeats the entire purpose of why I'm starting a flower farm. So I am willing to pay a premium on locally grown. So that's why they were $1.50 a stem. And I knew that I could put 8 in a bouquet and sell it for $20. So if you do the math, that's a little bit over $2 per stem. Now, I had 26 total bouquets. I was able to sell 23 of them. I had 3 left. And of the 23 that I sold, 22 were at that $20 mark. And one of them was at the $15 mark simply because by the time 12 noon, like 2 hours in, rolled around, the tulips started opening up. And even though I kept them cool, I put ice water, I was in the shade, it was just a really, really nice warm day. And so the tulips started opening and I just could not in good faith, keep it at $20, right? So I put it at $15. So 22 bouquets sold at $20, 1 bouquet sold at $15, giving me a grand total of $455. Now, I bought all of those stems for $289. So I bought 210 stems. That allowed me to make 26 bouquets. I had like 2 stems left over that I basically put in a vase for myself. And I netted, if I do the math right, $166. So not bad for kind of like reselling. And it was a good indicator to me that $20 is an appropriate price point for that market because the same grower who I bought from for my tulips actually sold at that market, and she told me she had a really hard time pricing at that market. She had bouquets at $25, $35, and $50. And, didn't really move too much of the inventory. And the market manager actually told me that there used to be a flower farmer who also sold. They were great flowers, but people were just not willing to pay at that price point. So that was just all really good information for me. And I was going to price my tulips at $20 anyway, but it really validated it. So for me, I know I can sell flowers at $20. And if anything, it further validated my plan after I talked to the market manager, which was the fact that I said, I am going to grow sunflowers. I'm going to specialize in growing sunflowers for this market. And then, I have some snapdragons, I have stock, I have dahlias. I'm going to do that kind of stuff too, as well as zinnias. But my focus is going to be sunflowers because I know sunflowers are going to sell. And I'll probably sell sunflowers anywhere from $15 to $20 for a large bunch. So I felt good about that coming out of this market. Now, one of the things that, you might be thinking to yourself is, great, well, you sold about $455 worth of flowers, which means that the majority of what you sold was not flowers, right? It was soaps, shampoo bars, candles, sanitizers. And that is correct. But let me tell you, I think that flowers and soap, believe it or not, are very complementary in terms of bringing people to my stand. So I had buckets of flowers. 26 bouquets when you put them all on a table. And I didn't put all of them. I think I put 15 on a table at once. Like, you can just see the color. It's very vibrant. It's very cheery. And people were literally walking around with a bouquet in their arm after when they bought it. So people were looking for me. And when they came to my stand, they started smelling, oh, what is that smell? It smells like soap. It smells like candles. So it's a very interactive experience for people where they started picking up soap. They started picking up candles. In the past, I would have people kind of just come by like, oh, I smell it. But it really felt like that the flowers helped attract people in with the soap, and even vice versa. People who came in because they smelled the soap and candles were like, oh, you have flowers too, right? So there were quite a few customers who actually bought both a bouquet and some soap and candles. So the soap and candles in total, I sold $932 worth. And, that for me is, again, a really, really great day. So let's talk about how much money I actually made, because we need to factor in what the cost of goods sold was. We need to factor in my time and my husband's time, because there are two of us manning the table today. And we also need to factor in the time and the mileage for us to get to the market, as well as for me to pick up my inventory, because even with the soap stuff, I no longer make my own soap and candles. I actually have a local soap maker who does it for me. So I've outsourced that because I've made one too many bars in my life to the point where I'm done making that kind of stuff. So let's start breaking it down. Cost of goods sold. Total cost of goods sold was $633. And that includes the flowers. I said the flowers were $289 worth, and also includes my soap and my candles. Let's talk about labor. So labor is one of those items where really no one factors it in, but you should get paid for your time. It's something I never factored in with my first business, or my soap business. And primarily that was because we donated everything that we made. But I went into this venture saying, I'm intending to make money. And let me tell you, with the house that I just moved into, we joke, it's a money pit. There's a lot of stuff that needs work. Things need to get fixed. The septic's eventually going to blow. I actually need the money this time. So I am intending to make a real business out of this, and I'm going to get paid for my time. So my husband and I spent 8 hours at the market, and we're going to say that I spent an extra 1 hour driving to and from the market with him. The market's about 20 minutes away, but we got there a little bit early. We set up, and then obviously, you break down after 2 p.m. So let's just say that was 11 hours. I also spent about 2 hours driving to get inventory for both my soap candle business as well as the flowers. So I'm saying that I spent 13 hours total in labor for this market. I'm valuing my time at minimum wage at $15, which is, I feel, somewhat generous and conservative at the same time. So labor alone cost $195. Let that sink in. $195, which, is kind of a lot when you think about it. Mileage. So I broke down mileage to get my inventory and mileage to get to the market in two separate line items. So mileage to get to the market. Luckily, this market was pretty close. It was 17 miles each way. I lived 18 minutes away. That was one of the draws of the market too. I got really lucky that I have a popular market within 20 minutes of me. $20, right? Because the IRS for 2022 is valuing each mile at 0.585 cents. So close to 59 cents per mile. So that gets me to $20 for today's mileage to and from the market. Mileage for my inventory. The local soap maker is actually a bit further away. And then the flowers that were locally grown were about 20 miles away from me. So total, it actually added up to 160 miles for both inventory runs. And that comes out to $94. So what that means is if you were to take out all of these costs away from the $13.87 revenue that I got today, that leaves me with $539 worth of profit. Correction, how could I forgot? I forgot two very important line items. I forgot the Square credit card processing fees as well as New Jersey sales tax. I have to collect tax and pay it to the state. So these two line items actually were not insignificant. The Square fees, so these are the credit card transaction processing fees. They totaled $32.17. And then New Jersey sales tax at 6.625% totaled $92. So that significantly brought down my profit. Well, not significantly, but by a decent amount. So $414. Still, I'm happy with that, but it goes to show you there's a lot of, it's not hidden costs with these markets, but like you hear this number like, oh, $1,400. It sounds so amazing. And it's like, well, it was good, except when I start considering all these costs, it's not as amazing as it sounds. And now one could say that, we could add back our labor of $195 back to the equation because technically, that's our money. And if you were to add that back, then that brings us to $609. But, I'm thinking about like how much money is left for the business that I made. And if I'm not around, like I need to hire someone to go to that market, right? So it's good to get into this habit of taking out the labor piece just so that you know how much you are truly profiting off of a single market event. Because I'll tell you, most markets, I lost money. And I actually have a video to show you how much money I lost. In case if you're interested, I'll put in the link below. But it's one of those situations where I know this is not going to happen forever in the sense that I am not going to have $1,000 plus days. Opening day, we knew was going to be crazy because people are just like, this is, I think, one of the first markets in terms of people like don't have to wear masks. They feel safer coming out from COVID. And then it's been winter, right? So people are looking for fresh produce, for things to buy really, right? So it's a very unique situation. And if I was at the market for next week for Mother's Day, I know that it would also be a really, really great market, but I'm doing every other week because I need to have a life too in terms of just having some weekend free since I work a full-time job. And I have a lot of weddings this year because everyone had to push back their weddings. So I think like 4 weekends that I'm not at the market, I will literally be at a wedding. So that is the financial side to the market. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is setup, what I would do differently, what the mistakes were that I made, because this is really important. I think that every single time you go to a market or you do a market, you need to ask yourself, so what worked really well? What didn't work well? What will I change next time? And even my husband asks me these questions because I'll ask him when he does his stuff. My husband, before we left, for the past 2 days, kept on asking, are you sure you only want one table? Do you want 2 tables? We can bring 2 tables. I'm like, no, 1 table's totally fine. I've usually done it with 1. I only have 1 tablecloth, so we brought 1 table. Now, the 1 table I was going to bring was my trusty old folding table. It's the one that you can carry. It actually has a handle. And I measured it out, and I was doing calculations to say like, okay, I'm going to put this amount of soaps here, this amount of candles here, this amount of flowers here. And it worked out in my head. Now, last minute, we swapped to another table because the table I was going to bring, the legs are really, really short. And we actually use PVC piping to put on each of the 4 legs to raise the table higher. So it feels like it's at counter height when the customer is there versus, being super low. So last minute, I swapped it out for another table that had legs that could accommodate that. And what I did not realize was that table was shorter. It was actually significantly shorter by probably about, I would say 2 feet, at least 2 feet. And 2 feet is valuable real estate when you already don't have that much real estate. So lesson number one, I'm going to bring a second table next time. The other thing was I wasn't sure how crowded we were going to be in terms of the vendors being next to each other, because I've typically sold at markets where your tent is right next to the next person's tent. And in this one, it was pretty spacious, so I could easily do a table out in the front and then a table adjacent to it and have people come up on the side, and that'd be totally fine. So I'm going to do that next time. The other thing that I'm going to do is I might revise my signage a bit. What didn't work this time in terms of a product sale was my CSA Mother's Day gift subscription. And I think a part of that was just there aren't enough people who know what a CSA is. I ran out of letters and space to write bouquet subscription. It's totally fine. I was just gonna have 4 slots just to test it out. But no one really even asked about it. I heard one person say, ooh, CSA. So clearly they knew what it was. But today was one of those markets where I've never had people actually form a line. Like people usually just crowd around and they want to pick up the soaps and they want to pick whatever up to smell it. I actually had a line forming, and I think that people are trying to be respectful of the line behind them. And so they really just came to like pick up and smell whatever they needed to smell to figure out what they wanted to buy and then move on. So we really weren't chatting as much as I normally would. So I think that if I were to remarket how the signage looked for the CSA, I could sell more, but to be honest, I'm not devastated because I really don't want to deliver bouquets on an ongoing basis right now. So that was just a really good experiment for me to try. That being said, one of the things that I was supposed to do that I forgot was I was going to bring a marker and some extra letters just so I could change pricing on the spot. For example, when I discounted my bouquet, I wasn't able to do it on signage. It had to be all verbal. And I think I actually could have sold all 3 remaining bouquets at $15. But I just didn't because people couldn't see it. I ended up trading those bouquets actually for some garlic, some apple cider, sausage, and I gave one to the market manager. So, it was still, it still went to good use. So again, not upset about that. And then last but not least, I think for the market next time, well, not I think, I know, I'm going to use Square. So I talked about in my last or 2 videos ago for market setup, I was testing out SumUp for a contactless payment method. And it completely failed. The transactions were not going through. It just said transaction error and it wouldn't even say why. So luckily I brought my backup trusty Square reader. It's literally the small square where you have to swipe. So much for contactless. But yeah, it was not good. The first guy, we swiped it like 3 times and you could see he was like, am I getting charged for this? But I would show him transaction did not go through. So he actually eventually paid for cash. I did say that we were cashless unless if they had exact change. So that was nice. I didn't have to deal with change at all. Most people were more than happy to pay with a credit card. In fact, they wanted to pay with a credit card. I was even surprised that the number of people asked, do you accept Google Pay or Apple Pay? So what I am going to do is I am going to buy a contactless Square little chip reader thing, right? Where you just put your phone or your credit card against it and it'll go through. But man, I was really disappointed with SumUp. So just lucky I had a backup solution and was able to still take payment on the spot. So yeah, at the end of the day, everything worked out. Even that payment fiasco that happened wasn't a real fiasco. People are super, super understanding. He was just like, don't worry about it. So, if I were really prepared, I would have set up the Square account with all the items. Yesterday night, I didn't do that. I literally did it on the spot in the market. So that's how easy it is to do it with Square. So lesson there, always have a backup payment plan and always test out the payment plan because I didn't want to charge myself yesterday by testing it. So I said, oh, like it looks like it's connected via Bluetooth. And then lo and behold, I swipe a card and it doesn't work. So all that said, overall great market. There are a couple of things that I said I was going to do that I didn't do. One of which was procure a white tent. I couldn't find a white tent and I honestly didn't want to order on Amazon. I didn't want that heavy thing to be shipped. That's a much heavier carbon footprint. I knew that my local hardware store would carry it, so I got a gray one, and it's fine. The second thing was I said I was going to collect email addresses. There was no space on the table to collect email addresses. In fact, there was so little space on the table, I almost didn't even put out the hand sanitizers. I'm glad I did, because I did sell some, but it was just, it was too crowded. And it was also one of those markets where I was just like, this is not the right time to collect email addresses. So I'm going to think a little bit more on how I want to do that. I may not even collect email addresses that way. I may actually create a stamp with a website or a QR code to basically lead them to a website saying like, hey, are you local? Do you want more frequent blooms? And then get them to, learn more about me and my flowers that way. I just don't think that a market, especially if it continues to be busy, is a good route for me to engage with people, tell about that. And it didn't seem like people wanted to actually give their personal data. So always an evolving learning experience. I'm super excited for the market in 2 more weeks. Like I said, I do expect it to die down a bit, especially once the weather gets really hot. But in 2 weeks, I should start having some ranunculus. So it's not a lot of ranunculus. It is some ranunculus, so I might still have to supplement by buying some more blooms. But I'm just excited that as time goes on, I'm definitely going to start getting my own blooms. And, it's going to be an adventure to see how much I sell. So that's it for now. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I will see you next time.